Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for UAS Magazine's podcast about the domestic Counter-UAS National Action Plan. I'm your host, John Nelson. Today, I'm joined by Content Coordinator of UAS Magazine and Program Manager for the UAS Summit and Expo, Dayna Bastian. I'm very excited to bring on our special guest. He brings a track record of generating revenue and building market leadership through visionary business strategies, inspired marketing, and insightful direction for rapid and sustained growth. Today, he is the Chief Marketing Officer of D-Fend Solutions, and he's written many articles and is regarded as the subject matter expert on counter-drone technology. It is my pleasure to welcome to the podcast, Jeffrey Starr. Thanks for joining us, Jeffrey.
Thank you, John, for that kind introduction, and it's wonderful to be here with you and Dayna.
Yeah, thanks, Jeffrey, for being here.
Definitely.
Let's dive right into this. So on April 25th of this year, the Biden administration released the first whole-of-government plan to address UAS threats in the homeland, the United States Counter-UAS National Action Plan. And as of this morning on the FAA website, there's over 865,500 drones registered here just in the U.S. And with that number expected to increase, new risks arise to public safety, privacy, and homeland security. So let's chat about this National Action Plan for a bit. As someone in the counter-UAS sector of the industry, what are some of your first thoughts and, takeaways from this release from the Biden administration on the National Action Plan?
Sure, Dayna, and that's a very good background introduction. I think you nailed some of the key background factors that led up to this. But in terms of the initial reaction, I would definitely say wonderful in the sense that it was long awaited and sorely needed. And it's very detailed, it's very comprehensive, it's multifaceted. So it's really both acknowledging the problem as well as taking some great concrete steps in a number of areas to address it. There's a couple of components to it that I would say kind of are the main themes that weave through the program. They touch on things like devolution of authority. They focus a lot on the technology, the emerging technologies to address this. They focus on certain environments like critical infrastructure, and they bring up a couple of other new areas that deserve focused development and attention, such as incident tracking. So overall, like I said, it's very comprehensive, and it's great in injecting a sense of urgency to this. So, at a high level, what sort of from our point of view, what we appreciate is it's recognizing the importance of the word I used before was devolution, which basically means extending authority to maximize the capability for things like UAS detection. This really is a very high priority. It deserves the attention it's getting. So there's a lot there in the area of detection. In addition, there's some steps, although I can talk later about how we're hoping to see this go even deeper with even more sense of urgency around not just detection, but the critically important area of mitigation. There's areas where they're taking steps. There's areas where they're showing some caution and restraint here. But basically, you can see that there's a lot of recognition around the fact that there's new mitigation technologies that really carry great potential for addressing the hazards of the proliferation of drones, but also taking into account and making sure that it's done in a safe manner and a controlled manner that doesn't carry with it or bring with it new risks. So in a nutshell, I mean, again, the plan covers so many different areas, but there's 5 in particular that I think may be worth further discussion or attention, and that's the detection, mitigation, the technology, the focus on critical infrastructure, and then the concept of an incident tracking database. So those are kind of the 5 areas which I think are most noteworthy. And I'm happy to in our discussion go deeper into each of those as appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put everything as well. Could you expand just a little bit on the extension of detection? As a counter-UAS technology provider, D-Fend Solutions, what do you believe needs to happen for the expansion of UAS detection authority to state, local, territorial, tribal, and to critical infrastructure?
Exactly. So these are very important actors in addressing this threat. These entities are really the front line. Many times they're the only one that's there or available, and they have a heavy burden. I mean, they have to ensure safety in a lot of environments, use cases, and scenarios. When you think of big events like concerts and marathons and games and sports, and you think of protecting landmarks and local government buildings and things like that, combined with now what's become very easily accessible, low cost commercial drones, and the sky's getting more and more crowded. They're readily available for either malicious people or just careless people that can cause real mayhem at these events, that damage facilities, population can be harmed. Lots of other threats in terms of surveillance and even attack. And the local first responders really are in the situation of having to respond. So at a minimum, we want them to have the detection capabilities to address this, and especially since they may be the only available resource. So giving this detection authority to these local level jurisdictions, that's a huge step forward. It expands the coverage and reach of the security infrastructure to detect these rogue drones, and just the sheer numbers, the locations and the resources of local law enforcement employing detection technologies would basically translates into a massive increase in the forces ready to contend with the threat and heighten our homeland security readiness and responsiveness. So that's on the detection side, which I think is a big step forward.
And I do have one question on that. If you look at the plan, the action plan, one of the last points is enhance cooperation with the international community on counter-UAS technologies. How does that incorporate, with what you're talking about on a local level and whatnot? How do you incorporate that international information and coordinate those efforts, or how do you see that playing out?
That's an excellent point. When you think of, for example, when we consider a lot of the use cases or a lot of the incidents that are occurring, first of all, a lot of them are international in scope. And the most obvious example of that would be borders. So the border security and border security agencies, and dealing with lots of drone issues at the border, whether it be people using drones to smuggle contraband across border, or bad actors using drones to conduct surveillance in order to then carry out criminal activity like human trafficking. So there's definitely, that's just one use case where international cooperation is going to be critical, and where you need this kind of synchronization and, again, greater detection and ultimately mitigation authority at an international level to contend with this threat. Certainly on a global basis, even in areas of military conflict, most recently the conflict in Ukraine, where you see a lot of the warfare from both sides actually are not just using military, conventional military equipment, but a lot of it is commercial and do-it-yourself drones that have been adapted in a remarkable way. So that kind of has highlighted the learning and awareness on a global level. And certainly the U.S. and forces are cooperating with our allies to learn from that, cooperate with that, and bring some of these drone defense mechanisms to a global level as well.
And the types of pernicious activities that you're seeing, I mean, is it really more? We're my mind, and then this is just me, but my mind goes to, okay, they're strapping a bomb to this thing and they're flying it in. But really, is it are you seeing more of the threat is really the, finding data, it's more data collection for bigger, machinery or weapons to be used? Is that really the activity that's happening, or one of the bigger threats, or is it all the above?
Yeah, no, it's all of the above for sure. It's so multifaceted. I mean, definitely a part of it is the threats from reconnaissance and intelligence gathering, but there's also much more direct and potentially catastrophic threats as it relates to attacks, but also all kinds of harassment, nuisance, disruption, smuggling. There's really lots and lots of use cases, and the variety and proliferation of all the potential crimes using drones as a platform is, I think, what was the impetus or the stimulus for the White House to step up and take action.
Right. Thinking all the big things first, but really it's all these little things that may go unnoticed that are happening. And I think, it's interesting to think about that. So
I do think that's a really good segue into my next question here. For those of our listeners who were unable to attend the UAS Magazine's UAS Summit and Expo last year in North Dakota, you sat on a Counter-UAS panel with some other esteemed members of the Counter-UAS community. Could you go over some of those mitigation methods for mitigating some of that, faux drone levels of action, and how you see them being integrated into the federal pilot program for expansion to the SLTT level?
Exactly. Yeah, that's perfect. So all those things that we mentioned just earlier now on the detection side is great, but what we're trying to emphasize in kind of how this plan could be extended or enhanced or improved is that extending the detection capabilities alone is going to be very limited benefit unless you also extend the complementary mitigation authority. For all the same reasons they need the detection capability, they also need the mitigation authority. Now, a pilot program is nice, and that's good, and it's a step in the right direction, but we really need, very clear direction and performance indicators such that, to really rapidly move to allow state and local and then infrastructure, maybe we'll talk about later, to also mitigate. But what's encouraging here, and again, it's first steps, but we'd like to see it carried out in even a more accelerated and deeper way. And I think that's where you're going to with the panel. Is there's a firm action item here to list equipment specifically, and this is very interesting because this is where there's a recognition that the threat into the homeland, the threat in civilian and sensitive airspaces is very different than dealing with this problem on the conventional military battlefield, because there's a whole section, or there's lots of language in the plan that really focuses on avoiding operational or communication disruption of the airspace. And that's encouraging, because a lot of the legacy technologies that you started to where you started to go with that question, Dayna, a lot of those legacy technologies are problematic, and what we're seeing here is more innovation or encouragement of innovation that focuses more on things like safety, control, and continuity, and encouraging trial and adoption of new technologies, of smart technologies that go beyond jamming and kinetic and just trying to shoot things down, and all those risks that they carry of disruption and collateral damage. Here, there's a stated need. Let's avoid or minimize the adverse impact on what's called the NAS, the National Airspace System, and let's look for next generation approaches, because those traditional technologies, nothing wrong with them. They performed well in certain environments, and they definitely are needed in a layered defense to have all options, but they have drawbacks in these kind of sensitive and urban environments. I'm happy to go through some of them. Depends how much detail you want. But radar often has a false positive problem. And here, when you're talking about a fast-moving drone situation in a civilian environment, you need fast and accurate detection without a lot of false positives. And on the mitigation side, and that's just there's other challenges in detection. I mean, acoustic. Drones are becoming quieter, environments are becoming noisier, and so that's also a problem. Optical solutions, especially in an urban environment, you don't have a clear line of sight. So all of these are kind of pointing to the need for new technologies on the detection side. On the mitigation side, it's even more acute. You have a lot of issues. I mean, the most common technique has been jamming. Jamming has lots of problems here with this new threat in the urban environment or a sensitive environment. Jamming, first of all, is only temporary. You can only jam for so long, and when you stop jamming, the pilot regains control. And then kinetic. All kinds of kinetic have the danger of collateral damage. Either if the projectile of whatever it is, a bullet, a laser, a magnetic field, a drone-killing drone, a net, or whatever you're throwing or shooting, if it misses the drone, it can land somewhere else. And even if it hits the drone and the projectile are going to come down and land on something. So again, this new emphasis on next generation counter-UAS technologies, including smarter systems that could disconnect and really take control of the situation for a safe route, safe landing, continuity, making an incident become a non-incident. That we feel needs to be a big focus of it, and we're encouraged by some of the language in the plan that really pushes that kind of innovation.
Yeah, you talked about innovation. I think it's important. I think somebody on your panel mentioned that there's really no silver bullet solution. There's so many different types and certain use cases for different types. And I think you kind of nailed that on the head a little bit there. So talking about those incidents, let's just chat. What are your thoughts on implementing that incident tracking program?
Well, that's interesting that you raised that in terms of the tracking. First of all, we have a lot of experience in that area. This is not part of our. It's not part of our core offering, but we, for example, on our website, we have something called an incident tracker, where we're tracking drone incidents from the public domain, not related to our own work, but just from the public domain, that are happening all around the world in all different sectors and environments and use cases. And based on, and we simply do that as a kind of resource, or best, a resource to the industry, and as a kind of source of best practices. And what we figured out from that is when you really track and study these incidents, you really get to a much better understanding of the threat and all of its facets. But it also, as we gain more experience in tracking the incidents, we realized what needs to be tracked. And what needs to be tracked is, the environment, the sector, the use case, what transpired, what was the nature of the incident? Was it an attack? Was it just an accident? Was it just someone being careless? Was it deliberate? And the details about the drone itself, the drone, the make, the model, the protocol, what are people using? What seems to be prevalent? And when you have that kind of database, that leads to huge understandings, in terms of what are the trends, what's the next danger that may come, what are the early indicators. So when you put the resources of the federal government behind something like this in a more comprehensive way, and we've seen, certainly, for example, the FAA has published databases of sightings near airports and things like that. But when this becomes more comprehensive and cuts across all different sectors and use cases and really tries to go deeper, I think the learning on everyone's, all the players in the chain, whether it be the drone manufacturers, counter drone people, the government, end users, the security agencies, can really help to, like we say, stay a drone threat ahead by seeing the trends in terms of what's happening of incidents and accidents and attacks.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us, Jeffrey. I think we are nearing our end of our time here for our podcast, but we usually like to end on a little bit of a fun question. And kind of going back to D-Fend Solutions and your technologies, what is an incident, if you can talk about it? What would you say as a case study is one of the more unique incidents that D-Fend Solutions technology has been used to mitigate that risk?
Sure, and I appreciate how you prefaced the question. Unfortunately, certainly for me as a marketing executive of the company, for the most part, by and large, we're, for obviously understandable reasons, we're strictly forbidden from talking about any actual case studies or use cases. But occasionally there's an exception for various reasons. And one that happened a few months ago is in the public domain because an incident, a statement was made by the security forces involved, after which we were then given approval to issue a clarifying announcement, and then it was covered quite a bit by the press, which was we were actually, our technology, I should say, was being employed or deployed by the security authorities in Slovakia during a papal visit. The Pope was making a week-long visit to the country and culminating in a mass with like 60,000 people and hundreds of bishops and lots of priests and bishops and the whole retinue. And our technology was used, as first of all, it was the convergence of multiple use cases. Our technology was being used as a moving bubble of protection, a mobile deployment of counter drone, if you will, during the travels of the Pope throughout the country. But then it kind of culminated in a mass event, which was a mass in Jastin, a city with a shrine in Slovakia. And so the system was deployed there. And during the mass, there was an approaching unknown or unauthorized drone. And this is a classic case where it's not only VIP protection, but it's protection of a mass event, of an event with tens of thousands of people. And the technology detected this rogue unauthorized drone. And interesting, it was sort of the classic use case. At that point, the security authorities had to make some very, very quick decisions about what to do. Did they want to jam it? But jamming was considered as an option, but they realized all the mission critical communications and media and security communications that was taking place at the time, and felt that jamming would be highly disruptive and potentially make the problem worse in some ways from a security communications point of view. So that's why they decided to employ this kind of cyber takeover, or what they did was what we call a fend off, which was they felt the best course of action would be to push the rogue unauthorized drone back to its takeoff point, back to where it came from. And this whole incident transpired without the masses really knowing, without any operational disruption. So what was potentially an incident, and we still call an incident, really effectively became a non-incident. And by the way, you can watch some really interesting videos about this incident and read some excellent articles about it. You can find them on our website in the media coverage section if you want to, if any of the audience wants to watch a video on that. So that's an example of a use case, and that's exactly the point. I think it's exactly the kind of situations and scenarios that the White House is talking about in terms of wanting to encourage new technology deployment. To kind of take control of the situation, you need to take control of the drone itself.
Excellent. Good information. So, yeah, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you at the UAS Summit coming up here as well. Sure. So
always a great event.
I got to plug that. We got to plug that. So
yeah, it's coming up here.
In October.
No, you do a fabulous job with that event every year, for sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for sharing your knowledge, your expertise with our readers and listeners of UAS Magazine. We're really looking forward to talking a little bit more about this at the UAS Summit as well.
Yes. Thank you for sharing
Excellent.
Your time with us.
And thank you, John and Dayna, for the insightful questions and great dialogue. And yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity. There's a lot of momentum and excitement around this new White House plan, and we'll see how that kind of stimulates steps to take, to adopt and expand the new technology horizon for Counter-UAS.
Excellent.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you.
Great. Thank you, John and Dayna. Bye-bye.